Good evening. My name is Major Peter J. Lupo. I have proudly served in the Armed Reserve since 1988 and approaching my 26th year of service. During the course of my military career, I was deployed to Germany and Kuwait. I am currently stationed at Joint Base McGuire-Dix, Lakehurst, New Jersey. Like many who have served as long as I have, I intend to stay in the military until I depart as a uniformed service retiree. How would you react if you entered into an employment contract with a company, fulfilled every obligation for which you were responsible, and were ready to move on? And in doing so, you were fully relying on the subsequent payment obligations promised by your employer and the contract. Only to find out a few years later that your employer unilaterally changed the original deal terms and was cutting you out of nearly $83,000 to which you were entitled and in which you were relying. Retired Vice Admiral Robert Ryan insists that is precisely the effect that Section 403 of the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013 will have on military retirees. As American citizens, each one of you probably has a friend, family member, or even an acquaintance who is a retired veteran. And if your experience is like mine, some of those retirees are like a retired Korean War veteran I knew who lived above an electrical shop in a one-day apartment in a hometown of Brooklyn, New York. If he was alive today, I would be deeply concerned about his well-being in the face of the upcoming benefit cuts. He barely got by with what he did receive. Do your retired military friends and loved ones face similar circumstances? And we also look around at your children who may be entertaining a career in the military. Considering the retiree benefit reductions, you may now think twice about encouraging them to enlist. You may even grow more distrustful of the government than you already are. The 1% reduction in the cost of living allowance to military retirees under 62 years of age is unacceptable. Therefore, it is crucial for us, as American citizens, to convince Congress to repeal this provision located in Section 403 of the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013. The following items should be considered. We will examine how much the upcoming cuts scheduled to effect in 2015 will actually cost retirees. Then we will consider how much the cuts will save the federal government. Finally, we will consider the hopeful development that a bill to repeal the benefit reductions has already been introduced to the Senate. We will begin with a look at the numbers. Let's examine how much the upcoming cuts will actually cost retirees. As an example, a typical retiree having served for 20 years and retiring at the rank of Sergeant First Class at age 40 will receive $23,000 annually. According to the Military Officers Association of America, if the cost of living rises 3% during the first year, which cuts take effect, this retiree will lose $230. The association also estimates that the same retiree will lose $7,960 per year by the time he turns 61 due to the compounding effects of the 1% reduction. It's easy to see how the total amount of loss quickly adds up. In fact, the association estimates that the typical retiree will lose roughly $82,902 between the time he retires and the time he turns 62. I can't speak for everyone, but that is a lot of money for me. It is even more upsetting in light of the fact that Leon Panetta, the Secretary of Defense in 2011, spoke unambiguously about maintaining military retirement benefits. During a public hearing in 2001, he stated that, quote, "those benefits are going to be protected under any circumstances," unquote. And here we are in 2014, and the story has changed sharply. Now you have a clear picture of just how much the budget cuts will cost retirees. We will look at why they were enacted in the first place. Let us now consider how much the cuts will save the federal government. As opposed to the cost to retirees, which requires some calculation to fully understand, the savings to the government is relatively straightforward. The 1% cost of living allowance reduction is intended to save $6 billion over the next decade. While that may sound like a lot of money, it amounts to a $600 million annual savings. This represents a tiny fraction of the 2013 federal budget of $2.77 trillion. Almost everyone with even a passing awareness of politics knows that the federal budget negotiations in 2013 reinforced already deep political divisions between the Republican and Democratic parties. Every dollar of revenue and expenditure was sharply debated. This trend will likely continue with the 2014 budget and onward. Thus, even a minuscule savings of $600 million a year can make a significant difference in an annual budget. A federal budget is far too complex and extensive to analyze in any depth here. But briefly put, suffice it to say that nearly endless negotiation and political squabbling leads up to adoption of the bipartisan budget. Suggests that in addition to retirement benefits, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of other items under consideration for reduction. Considering the minor budget savings imparted by the benefit cuts, it is difficult to believe that there were no other items that could be reduced, resulting in greater savings for the government and less personal loss to those affected. Now that you understand how much the cuts will save the federal government, we can consider congressional activity that is currently taking place. Let's consider a hopeful development that has recently took place. A bill to repeal the benefit reduction was introduced in the Senate barely moments after the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013 was passed on December 18, 2013. Senator Mark Pryor of Arkansas sponsored the follow-up bill. Senator Kay Hagan of North Carolina is currently the only co-sponsor. The bill was assigned to the Senate Armed Services Committee on December 18, 2013, and there has been no movement since then. Committee Chairman Carl Levin of Michigan said that he would review the provisions before the cuts take effect. However, according to GovTrack, this bill has only a 9% chance of getting past the committee. This is not encouraging to suggest that if no action is taken by ordinary citizens, then this bill may wither on the vine. Now that you know encouraging action is already underway, let us look at what we have discussed so far. It is clear that these benefits cuts are harmful and unnecessary. The cost of retirees will be substantial, and savings to the government minuscule. And while the bill introduced by Mark Pryor is still on the forefront, matters being considered by the Senate Armed Services Committee as one of American citizens, you need to contact your local congressman and convince him, along with the rest of Congress, to repeal Section 403 of the Bipartisan Budget Act. The person who made this issue most tangible to me is a late Korean War veteran retiree. For you, it may be someone different. You may know someone who enlisted in the early 90s and was sent off to deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan before returning sometime late in the 2000s. She may now be struggling, and you may worry about her. These upcoming cuts may push her over the edge to true hardship and poverty. You may not be certain about this, but you don't want to take the chance. I will leave you with this parting thought. As American citizens, you have the power to choose your own future. You have the freedom to decide when to remain silent and when to speak up. You also have the power to shape America's future by the choices you do make, and when you decide to speak up or act. I sincerely hope that this is one of those instances when you will decide that speaking up is not only the correct course of action, but the only one. Thank you for joining me today.